So, my name is Chaya Morali. I'm a pediatric geneticist at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas. And I would love it if you could go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about your child as well.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I've got my daughter Tabby. She's 11 years old.
Okay.
Um,
Sorry, go ahead.
and she has like TANGO2 and 22q.
Yes, and that's what I had learned, and that's why we were interested in talking to you. Tell us about the diagnostic journey. I think that she was diagnosed with 22q first, so tell us about how that came to be.
So when Tabs was born, she was born by C-section. It was an interesting experience. She thought breathing was optional for a little bit, but sorted herself out. Um, she then had real issues feeding.
Mhm.
And she could not breastfeed, and she lost a load of weight. We had a 10-day hospital stay right after birth. They were
Mhm.
like, you have to bottle feed this child because she's not getting enough nutrition.
Mhm.
And then when I bottle fed her, she was quite clicky when she fed. She made like this clicky noise all the
Mhm.
time. And I bottle fed other kids, and I was like, this ain't normal.
Mhm.
Um, and she occasionally had a bit of milk coming out of her nose.
Yeah.
So we got home, and over like 6 months of like she is not developing like my friends' babies are.
Right.
She's behind at every single step. And everyone's like, hey, don't worry, watch and wait. Children develop in their own time. You're all cool. And I was like, no, I'm not convinced by this.
Yeah.
So and they focused quite a lot on the fact that the birth was quite traumatic, and they were like, you had a traumatic time, you're a bit emotional. And I'm like, yeah, but my child is still not hitting the milestones.
Yeah.
So it took a long time with basically them just ignoring the fact that this child was delayed,
Hmm.
and me getting increasingly annoyed, which is kind of a bit of a theme throughout my entire diagnostic journey with her. So we moved down to Basingstoke because I was wanted to be closer to my mum at this point, because I was like, yeah, something's really not right.
Hmm.
And then she had a massive choking episode where she went blue and stopped breathing, and the neighbours needed to resusc her, which wasn't a particularly fun day out for anyone.
How old was she?
I think she was about 12 months at that
Okay.
point.
Okay.
Um, when we got back from that, I phoned the health visitor and I was like, look, not being funny, but I'm done with being told to watch and wait. I'm done being told that all children develop in their own times. You need to come over
Hmm.
and have a look at the child because something is not right. And
Hmm.
she came over, she took one look, and she was like, I'm just gonna like refer you to everyone.
Was this
So
your
we
general pediatrician or was it a
um
different one than usual?
this was our health visitor.
Okay.
So
Oh, I see. So a little bit different.
yeah, I don't know if you have them over
We
where
don't
you
have that in the United States. So
are
yeah,
cool.
you'll have to educate me a little bit.
So they come over like when you have a child under 5, they come over, and they make sure that mum's all right, kids all right, hitting developmental milestones,
Oh, great.
doing like a 2-year check, making sure they're feeding, putting on weight, um, all
Is
that
it a
sort of stuff.
physician or is it kind of a trained nurse or another
Trained
trained professional?
nurse,
Okay,
like a
that's
trained nurse.
wonderful. So it sounds like your GP was not referring and kind of was
No,
watching and waiting, and then this health visitor was able to kind of push things forward, which is wonderful. I'm happy that that happened, although sad it took too long.
yeah. So she basically wrote to the GP and was like, "You are referring this child to the pediatrician." Um, because in the UK, I don't know if it's the same way you are, we don't see pediatricians routinely. If your
Ah.
child is healthy and developmentally okay, you would go for your GP, you'd have to be referred to a pediatrician.
So a
And they would
GP is like
only,
a family practice physician who'll see people of all
yes,
ages. I see.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And then you'd see a pediatrician if something was wrong.
Uh-huh.
So the health visitor wrote to the GP and was like, you are referring this child to the pediatrician.
Mm-hmm.
Then we went along and we saw the pediatrician who was like, yeah, we did some genetic testing. Um, and they tested for Fragile X and a couple of other things that all came back negative. And then they did a slightly broader range spectrum of testing, not as broad as we had with the 100,000 genome project, but a bit broader.
Yeah.
And that's when they found the 22q11 deletion.
Do you remember them calling it a chromosomal microarray or CMA?
No, when we went in for the diagnosis, the pediatrician was like, She has 22q11 deletion. It can be called Di George. And they
Hmm.
showed us a Wikipedia page.
Wow.
And then told us to go out and get a nice meal.
My
Which
goodness.
um
Some delivery.
yeah, it was interesting.
Indeed.
So I went away and I was like, what the actual was that? Went online, found Max Appeal, which
Hmm.
is a 22q charity in the UK here,
Uh-huh.
connected up with people, read all their documentation, and got to the point where I felt like I knew what we were dealing with.
Hmm.
Um, Went back to the pediatrician and was like, it says here we should probably be doing a couple of bloods,
Hmm.
checking that like her thyroid's working, her heart's
Yeah.
working, her kidney's working. That all got sorted in the end.
So you had
Um,
to be the one to advocate for it. I'm surprised they didn't refer you to a geneticist or any specialist at all at that first diagnosis. No.
oh,
My
uh,
goodness.
it's interesting with her. So yeah, I had to basically go along and go, guys, but luckily her kidneys are fine, her heart is fine,
Great.
her thyroid is fine at the moment so far, touch wood. So all the real physical side of 22q.
Yeah.
Her immune system's squiffy, but we got referred to immunology and she's on prophylactic antibiotics.
Great.
Um, but all like the real major, like real worry points of 22q,
Hmm.
we seem to have got away with. But what we have got is a lot of issues around speech and
Hmm.
learning,
Hmm.
development, anxiety,
Yeah.
autistic like behaviors.
Sure.
That's where the 22qs really presented
Showing
itself.
for herself. Now, how old was she when you actually got the 22q diagnosis?
18 months.
18 months. And you mentioned milk coming out of the nose. It makes me think of the velopharyngeal insufficiency these kiddos can have. Did she
Yeah,
have
she
see an
has
ENT
got
for that or?
no. So she has got, finally, we got a diagnosis of a submucous cleft palate.
Right.
Um, but as my story shows, I had to get quite arsy with speech and language therapy because they were like, she has 22q. Of course, she's going to sound a bit nasally. Of course, the speech is going to be poor.
But
At
there's a
that point,
reason
she
for
wasn't
that.
really talking at all. And I was like, I think she might have a cleft. Milk came out of her nose when I like looked up and spoke to other parents.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually, when she was about 5,
Mm-hmm.
we got sent to the cleft team. The
Mm-hmm.
first cleft team were like, there's nothing there. And I'm like, I'm not convinced. Then they did a video fluoroscopy and they found it. Um, we haven't had any surgery on it.
Okay.
It's an ongoing issue of debate at the moment,
I see.
about whether or not we're going to do surgery for it or not,
Mm-hmm.
um, and about how much she will tolerate
Surgery at all,
mentally
right? Yeah,
more,
sure.
because it's a big surgery, not like a small one.
Right.
Um, so that's when they picked that up.
I see.
Um, but yeah, it's been a lot of the time with tabs. It's mostly been me advocating and fighting really, really hard to
Yeah.
get the things sort of done and checked. Um,
Well, I'm
but
glad she has you to do that.
yeah, around about just after a 22q diagnosis, she started having floppy episodes.
Right. I was just going to start asking you,
Yeah,
when did she have, because everything we've talked about so far could go with 22q. The developmental
yeah.
delay could go with TANGO2, but yeah, what were the TANGO2 symptoms that arose and when did you start to notice something else is going on?
So she started having really weird floppy episodes. And the first time is when we just came back from holiday. And we were like, oh, she's just tired, but still. So we took her in, and they're like, weird. Um, Basically. And they're like, she's just had a new diagnosis of 22q. You're emotional, you're upset, we get it. And I'm like, child has no muscle tone. Not being funny, but my emotions does not affect that. Yes, I'm freaking out,
Exactly
but
right. Yeah.
you know, um, and we had to go in loads and then they're like take videos of when it starts. So we took loads of videos. Then it happened in front of my mum and my mum went in with me going, you know
Hmm.
and then they were like referred us to neurology and then they were like, oh, it's behavioral. And I'm like, no, it's not.
Mm.
Oh, it's epilepsy maybe, yeah, but the EEGs all came EEGs all came back clear. And it went on for ages, like maybe it's Niemann-Pick's, maybe it's narcolepsy, maybe it's cataplexy. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the time they were saying it's just 22q. And I'm like, no, it's not, because other 22q children do not do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got the head tilt coming in. And then we got it where she'll just like lose half her body and the other half would be working, and then we'd have where she'd go stiff, and
Mm.
it went on for ages, and I was just like, something is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So she got a diagnosis of dystonia, which she still has as a working diagnosis. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that explains it when she goes stiff, but it doesn't explain it when she goes floppy.
Right.
And eventually, I lost my temper again. And I said to them, my child's not a pincushion. We're going on the 100,000 genome project.
When
And all
was
the,
that? And who did you say that to?
I
Like
think
around
it
what
was,
age was she and things like that?
I think it was about 2016.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm done. And I said it to neurology and
Mm-hmm.
the doctors on the wards and our pediatrician
Mm-hmm.
and the neurologist and everybody who was listening. I'm like, I am done. We're not doing this anymore. It's not fair.
Uh-huh.
And everyone's like, we're not going to find anything, but we'll put you on it. Essentially, the underlying tone was just to shut you up and make you go away, essentially.
Tell
I was
me
like, fine.
about the 100,000 Genomes Project. Is it a research study? Is it something you can enroll in yourself, or does your doctor have to nominate you?
So in the UK, it's a research study where they were gathering people who had they do both cancer and rare disease, but obviously we
Okay.
were under rare disease. If they had symptoms or learning difficulties or something going on,
Mm-hmm.
that conventional genetic testing wasn't showing anything up,
Got
and
it.
all the other diagnosis like systems were not showing coming back with any results.
Right.
Your doctor could put you into the project and they would screen my blood, my husband's blood, and Tabby's blood, and
Mm-hmm.
they would look at they had the whole genome, and they look at panels depending on how the child's presenting.
I see.
So obviously in Tammy's case, it looks like muscle panels and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
We got one letter saying, we haven't found anything. I was like, okay, well, that's the end of that. And then about 6 to 8 months later, we had a phone call. It was in August 2020, like splat bang in the middle of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, you need to come down to Southampton Hospital. And I was like, you found something. And the person over the phone was like, I am not confirming or denying anything. I'm just like, I know you found something.
Yeah.
We went down there and they wouldn't let my husband in. So I
Probably
had
they
to
only
go,
allowed one at a time or something because of the pandemic.
yeah, so I had to go by myself with tabs, which I'm still quite cross about now. I'm like, I think in that situation, you
Yeah, it's
know,
hard. Yeah.
and they told me that she had TANGO2, um, and neither of the doctors there really knew a lot about TANGO2,
Mm-hmm.
um, and they were just like, oh well, we found something, and I was like, okay, well, what now? And they were like, we're not really sure, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay. So came away, told John. Originally my first reaction was, Jesus, we found something, it's all over, it's sorted, we fixed it,
Mm-hmm.
thank God for that. Then properly burst into tears. Then came home, did my usual thing, which was like, I need to meet other people
Mm-hmm.
with in this situation. I didn't realize how rare it was at the time.
Right.
Had a shock of my life realizing how rare it was.
Mm-hmm.
Found the TANGO2 Research Foundation, found the Facebook group. And then like through that, I realized actually, hang on, we should probably be under a few more doctors. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what? Read the care plan and went, huh? So phoned back our doctors and was like, not being funny, but on the Research Foundation website, they had like an emergency care plan. This sounds like quite serious, and we've been given no guidance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know there's a pandemic going on, but would quite like to have a bit of guidance.
Sure.
They're like, oh no, you'll be fine. Then I phoned back and I was like, no, we're not fine. And then we got referred to the metabolic centre up in London
Okay.
and the metabolic dietitian, and everything started coming together a little bit more at that point.
Oh, that's
Um,
good.
and we started getting the support we needed,
Hmm.
um, which was a hell of a shock because like we didn't understand anything about Tango 2, so we didn't actually realize what we were dealing with and like how serious it was.
Yeah.
We thought it was just a little bit like 22q. Yeah, it's annoying, but hey ho.
Hmm.
So yeah, that was a bit of a shock to the system. Um, so yeah, then we just started to get into the swing of things really. But then Tabs being Tabs decided she wasn't going to eat for a bit, and then we ended up getting a peg tube. That's a very long story short.
Yeah.
Um, and at the moment, for the last couple of years, she's been adding vomiting into the mix, and they think she's got cyclical vomiting symptoms syndrome or something else going on gastro-wise,
Mm-hmm.
which is causing chaos because obviously every time she vomits, upper SOS, we need to go in and go on a drip, um,
Right.
which is happening quite a lot at the moment. So
And it's also not fun.
really not. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a brief-ish overview. Um,
No, yeah, you really did a beautiful job of summarizing it. And I can see that you've had to do a lot of advocacy yourself. And I'm glad that she
yeah.
got the diagnosis. But I think a lot of things we're hearing from all these families as we interview people is that getting the diagnosis is really exciting at first, and it still remains exciting, but then a lot of other stuff comes from that. And you start to feel all the other emotions and have to really think more about what to do next.
Yeah, like even though like we're 4 years on from the diagnosis, it still feels very new.
Hmm.
Like with the 22q, I almost felt more settled into it. But with the Tango 2 stuff, it still feels new every day. Like it still feels like we're learning.
Yeah.
And that we haven't really got a grasp on that. But obviously that's because we're dealing with a lot of unknowns.
Hmm.
So yeah,
I hear
it's
that.
interesting.
Well, thank you for sharing all that. It's really wonderful to
Right.
hear your story. Thank you.
Thank you.